don't consider myself the best at backgrounds, character designs, or even proper composition, but I do know my strengths, or at least the things I find myself enjoying. One of them is definitely ambience, or the vibe of an illustration, short or animatic, that I do. I very much pride myself on the ability to evoke a certain emotion, because yes, on many occasions I have been told online and in DMs that someone has bawled their eyes out to an animation of mine, or that they felt the emotion that the characters on screen have shown. And to that, I always give myself a little pat on the back, because the expressions of art and how it makes an audience feel is something I am very, very passionate about. You have to take those wins in stride. Give yourself a pat on the back if you ever achieve something that you've always aimed for. That could be another video entirely on its own, because today I want to detail another strength of mine, or again, at least something I've always had fun doing, and that's art style challenges. Now, there's usually at least 3-ish types of these things that I've always noticed. One being challenges that pertain to fellow artists, like draw this in your art style challenges, the kinds of stuff that you do with your mutuals or friends. The second is themes. This could be like an anime 90s retro style kind of vibe, maybe analog horror or superhero comic. This point though is somewhat messy because I kind of realized that it bleeds in and is very much related to our third point, which is art styles present in particular series. So there's thousands of ways you can separate all that into categories and whatnot, but we do not have time for that today. Today, the kind of art style that I want to emulate are manga covers. I want to make a clear separation from the mangaka's art style to their usual panels to that of covers. Since rather than drawing my characters in a black and white scene, I figured I'd be more satisfied with a more finalized piece. So I decided to choose from a list of series that I was familiar with. Most I've been reading, others I simply know very well. I just figured it would make doing it all more enjoyable. I thought about which OC from the figurine shelf I should choose for this challenge and figured, you know what? I'll collaborate with chat today. So with the enlistment of their help, I honestly just asked them to say random words until something stuck, and we made an OC on stream. Using the words suspicious, sword, snake, and horrific, I think, we chucked it into a mixing pot and came up with Naga, honorably named by Odie from chat. Hi Odie! I honestly didn't think too hard on her design, but nonetheless, I was happy with the outcome. I also figured green hair just made sense. When my instincts tell me green, who am I to say no? With the creation of Naga, we spun the wheel. And our first contender was Undead Unluck. I won't lie, I didn't really want to start with this one, not because I hate the art style or anything. I love the manga, I love the art, it's so fun, but it was because out of all the chosen series from today, I felt like it was already somewhat close to my own style. And in my mind, it only made it harder to try imitate Yoshifumi Tozaka's art. By the way, I'll be talking a bit about each series as we go. Written and illustrated by Yoshifumi Tozaka, Undead Unluck started as a one-shot released in 2019, published by Shueisha's Weekly Shonen Jump. The series later became a serialized manga on the same magazine. Thus far, it has 21 volumes and has been ongoing since its release. In 2022, an anime was announced, and the following year, animated by David Production, Undead Unluck was aired on Japanese television. Now, I found out about Undead Unluck on seeing the first anime trailer drop. My buddy and I, Rob, shout out to Rob, were scrolling through anime announcements for the upcoming year and seasons, and Undead Unluck immediately caught my eye. I'm a big fan of theatrics and anything off the walls. I guess you can say bizarre. I like bizarre things. Undead Unluck in its first few panels and in the trailer itself immediately hooks you in with a who the hell, what the hell, and why the hell. It's not really a spoiler because it's literally the first scene, but the audience is greeted with our main character, Fuko, reading a romance manga, only to shut it and say, "Now that I've seen my favorite manga to the end, it's time to end it all." The series goes as follows. After reading the conclusion of her favorite manga series, Fuko Izumo finally feels ready to end her existence. For the past 10 years, Fuko has been afflicted by a condition that brings extreme misfortune to anyone who touches her. This has had a drastic effect on her surroundings, even inadvertently resulting in the deaths of those around her, including her parents. As she stands on a bridge above train tracks, Fuko is touched by a strange man, causing the footing underneath him to break and dropping him in front of an oncoming train. However, when Fuko finds the man's corpse, she discovers that his body is regenerating and that he is coming back to life. The man, whom Fuko names Andy, is immortal, and like her, he also wishes for death. Initially dismissive, Fuko eventually decides to team up with Andy to give him the best death possible, but a mysterious organization lurks in the shadows, hoping to take advantage of the duo's bizarre abilities. I don't want want to get into explicit detail of all the story beats, but trust me, I do. I really do. Since I want you guys to have the chance to read it yourself if stories about fighting against all odds are your kind of thing. But something of very much importance, and this is pretty important, content warning for groping. When I initially picked up the series, reading through the first few chapters, I genuinely saw myself dropping it immediately, since there was an ongoing gag or cliche where Andy kept inappropriately touching Fuko, hands beneath her shirt and all. And in introducing either of their powers, the setup just made me so uncomfortable. Fuko's ability, Unluck, made it so that if anyone touched her skin, they'd receive a bout of unluck. These bouts would range from breaking your ankles all of a sudden, a plane combusting, to a damn meteor falling in your general direction. The amount of unluck depends on how much affection Fuko holds for you. Andy's ability, Undead, means he simply cannot die and is trying to find the greatest death. You see where this all leads up to? Yeah. So, I kept reading it, despite it all. Something about it genuinely felt different. While Andy initially did come off as a silly, haha, I want to find the greatest death, blah blah brute, we are immediately granted with scenes that make it seem like there's a lot more to him. I started feeling some depth to these characters, and lo and behold, as the series went on and I kept on reading, the author kind of just drops all the unnecessary fan service. Sure, Andy still gets butt naked here and there, and the duo still use skin-to-skin connection to use Fuko's unluck, but there is such a tangible change in the dynamic of the characters, and not just in the duo, but the cast that follows. Fuko very quickly shows herself to be insanely compassionate and capable as a partner, and Andy in the same manner shows himself as someone who was quite careless and lost until he met Fuko. These random quirks that make these characters up, while introduction might seem like a funny little haha gag, very quickly become quite harrowing as you start thinking about, wait, would having such an ability affect my day-to-day life? And Undead Unluck explores that in depth as we meet more and more characters with certain abilities. And once the reader is equipped with the rules of their abilities, the world building makes its entrance, and oh my goodness, it is such an interesting premise. And once that's introduced, chapter 132 happens, and all those characters you've met along the way, all their stories, it all comes together, and you're in for such a fun and wild ride. But yeah, you know, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I do highly suggest and highly encourage giving it a try. I'll have you guys know that it's very quickly become one of my favorite manga of all time, and that Fuko, my beloved Fuko, in my heart has earned her place as one of the most lovable protagonists ever. Her growth from her initial appearance in the series to where she is now is insane. The dynamic she grows with all the characters becomes so fun and endearing. The anime itself is pretty well made, and I believe it does a very good job, but many, including myself, do have a myriad of complaints, that being some scenes in the manga being actively changed. While these changes are minimal in nature, it is pretty disappointing to see when compared to the original source material. But the biggest disappointment and complaint is that Undead Unluck, the anime, for some reason just wastes so much time on recaps. The pacing is a bit horrid because of this, but I'm sure there's a one-pace version of the series, and if there isn't, there certainly will be. So, now equipped with such knowledge, let me introduce Naga in this universe. So, luckily her uniform and looks aren't all that wild in design, or too far removed from the looks of the original cast. I went in with a particular pose in mind, which, with the face, was basically the exact face that Gina was making in this one cover. I thought at first of putting Fuko in the forefront, arms up, ready to fight alongside Naga, but I found it annoying having to juggle the space and show enough of Naga on the cover, so sorry beloved, you got scooched right at the back. With another character named Tella. I chose to put him in the drawing because he looks an awful lot like a notorious character from my own personal Twitch streams, and if you know, you know. I went in a second time after fighting against the liner and popped off. I won't lie, I really like how this turned out. Naga looks menacing, but also like an ally to Fuko's union. So with that, we finished the Undead Unluck cover. Norami. Just when I thought it would all be smooth sailing from here, whoop-dee-doo! I had to work with the medium that I always fought so hard against, watercolor. Written and illustrated by the manga artist duo Adachi Toka, Noragami was serialized in December 2010, making a home in Kodansha's Shonen Monthly manga magazine. As said in my anime list, here's the summary of the story. As a relatively unknown minor deity without any worshippers, delivery god Yato takes on odd jobs for only 5 yen with the goal of amassing a fortune large enough to buy himself a shrine. But in addition to obscurity, he has another problem. His shinki, or weapon partner, has decided to resign, tired of being with the homeless god. Left with no weapon, Yato takes on more jobs, hoping to find a new partner soon. While out putting flyers for a missing cat, Yato sees said cat and chases after him right into the path of an oncoming vehicle. Hiyori Iki, a nearby girl, rushes to push Yato out of the way and ends up hurting herself. After waking up in the hospital, she discovers the incident has knocked her soul loose from her body. Realizing his actions caused this, Yato promises to help return Hiyori to normal, for 5 yen of course. But in order to return to her normal self, he requires a new shinki, which he finds in a rebellious spirit by the name of Yukine. In short, Noragami tells the story of a girl walking the line between 2 worlds and a stray deity's quest for a place to call his own. Noragami, to many others such as myself, holds a place special in their memories. Whilst not being widely popular like other franchises, it's still remembered fondly in the minds of those in the anime/manga community. I read pretty far into the manga when I was younger, at the end of the first season, but dropped it due to life getting pretty hectic. Things are moving around and I never really got back to it. When the second season released, I for some reason just couldn't keep up. Keep in mind, I was an itty bitty cookie when the second season was still airing, so one could easily chalk it up to me being insanely forgetful. My mind most likely caught up with something else. I do plan to revisit the series and give it a good old read, but I did end up spoiling myself on the ending. But I hope to enjoy it regardless. My sister and I adored the series when we were kids. We thought the openings were so cool and the art style so pretty. We made our own OCs and characters for the universe, and I think this was a time before I got really into digital art, so any and all fan art of Yato, Yukine, or Hiyori are hidden in the depths where no soul can reach them, so don't even try. So, in comparison to the Undead Unluck manga cover, I found myself slipping and sliding all over the place, trying to get a good grasp on where to start. I found it easy enough to find a pose, someone with a sword, something fancy with a background, and there, that should do it. No. As I previously mentioned, I've had rough experiences with the ins and outs of watercoloring. I'm very impatient, I'm a very undelicate artist, and watercoloring is a medium that's out to get me in that regard. You may think, whatever, it's digital, should be easier, couldn't be more wrong. Look at this. Actually don't, it's embarrassing. I tried to brute force my way through this piece and look where that got me. And so, as a cookie does, I went on in a second try and decided to be as patient as possible. For my laptop's sake and myself, as the watercolor brushes on Clip Studio were a bit laggy and slow. That's on my end, honestly. Watercolor relies on layers, and with that in mind, I tried my best, and with as much grace and humility as possible, I wafted my way through the piece. Now, it's not my greatest achievement, and it's not fooling anyone in being its own Noragami cover at all, but I still learned an important and valuable lesson, and that is, do not brute force your way into everything. I'm overall satisfied with the piece, and I'm happy. Jojo's Bizarre Adventure. This is gonna be fun. This is not my first rodeo with Jojo art. In fact, Jojo was a very important turning point in my life when it came to both my art and my online presence. Had it not been for that Jojo pose trend that happened in 2019, the song being Jojo Pose by Apollo Fresh, I do not think I'd be here making a video for you today. For a little bit of Kuwoki lore, near the end of school, I posted a fan art crossover between Jojo and some celebrities from the Grammys that year. It was Lil Nas X, Billie Eilish, Ariana Grande, and Billy Porter. I saw a tweet saying that they looked like a cast of Jojo characters and decided, you know what, why not? Let's do it. And it went viral. It was the most viral thing I had at the time for little old me, and it absolutely rewired my brain and my need to make more. I am not kidding when I say that without that video, I feel like the online journey I've experienced up until now would not exist. To put it in a sequence for you, I made the video, it went viral, it gave me a ton of followers, I joined the artist community on TikTok, I got art mutuals, I got invited to an artist Discord, I got my first proper commission, and then more. I do a few collaborations, I make more friends, I get invited to a Minecraft server and then make even more friends. They introduce me to some fandoms, they inspire me to stream, so I stream and then I draw and then I animate and then boom, a video gets over 1 million views, and then another, and then another. With my friends, I make a server. It becomes one of my most treasured projects that I can still recall fondly, and then, to this day, I get to make videos with you guys and now have an arsenal of friends that I would have never met had it not been for that Jojo pose video. And on that same note, someone wrote an article about that TikTok, which was a little insane to me. Sure, it was just a comicbook.com article, but still, insane regardless. To put it shortly, Jojo literally changed the direction of my life. As described in the Jojo wiki, the series is often shortened to Jojo or JJBA. It's a shonen and seinen manga, both written and illustrated by Hirohiko Araki. Originalized in the weekly Shonen Jump from the years 1987 to 2004, the series then moved to the monthly seinen magazine Ultra Jump, where it continues to this day. Split into 9 different parts. Each part features a protagonist, often named Jojo in some way, and their bizarre adventure battling new antagonists, meeting new friends, and new settings. Each Jojo is deeply entangled with their rich family history in some shape, way, or form, and their respective part showcases how they battle that in their own unique way. Part 1 features themes such as the undead, littered with ghouls and vampires, heavily inspired by the works such as Bram Stoker's Dracula. Part 2 features a ragtag duo in an Indiana Jones-like adventure as they traverse through World War II, searching for an artifact and exploring ancient temples and figures. Part 3 takes us around the globe, inspired by works such as Around the World in 80 Days, as our new cast traverses lands and sea, from Japan all the way to their final battle in Egypt. There's also a dog. His name's Iggy. Part 4, a quiet town with a series of strange events threatening its peace. Inspired by works such as David Lynch's Twin Peaks, Part 4 features mysterious murders and David Bowie. Part 5, the Italian Mafia. Part 6, Floridian Prison. Part 7, the Wild Wild West. And Jesus Christ is also in there. Part 8, Jojolian, discovering one's past through the fog of amnesia. Part 9, Jojolins, 2020 Hawaii. Jojo is many, many things. It's adventure, supernatural, thriller, comedy, tragedy, mystery, slice of life, and horror. The series explores 2 forms of power systems, that being Hamon, the first power source featured in the first 2 parts, and Stans, the power system that is more well known and often referenced. In its renditions of glamorous personalities, references to a wide variety of media from across the globe, with its bizarre presentation and storytelling with fights, characters, fashion, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is truly a phenomenon. I found the series through the trending to be continued meme. I think it was a little after Part 4 Diamond is Unbreakable was finished up, the anime at least, and I went in truly not expecting anything at all. In fact, I was a little bit of a hater of the art style. I went in mainly for 2 things: the memes and how crazy cool the openings were. So it was no surprise that I couldn't sit still and watch part 1 and 2. While I enjoyed it, there was nothing really that had me hooked and had me keep going with the series. So I took a little bit of a break, and one day decided to jump right back in. And part 3, yeah, I'm one of those part 3 enjoyers. Took my little heart hostage and wouldn't let go. I fell in love wholeheartedly and threw caution to the wind. I stopped caring about being serious about the series, and once that happened, I enjoyed it so much more. I became obsessed with Kakyoin. Despite not getting most of the screen time, he was a great character to me. I latched onto him, and I spent 2 years drawing and making a Tumblr ask. So I latched onto the series, and to get into it, you gotta really expect anything, and I mean anything. Despite seeming like a silly little show, it doesn't even stick to that sometimes. I've described it in the past as not a series, not a manga, not an anime, but as some weird experience that once you get into it rewires something in you. I think a lot of the confusion comes from the author, Araki, and if you know anything about him, anything at all, you'd understand why I'm fully convinced that he's some immortal being that decided to pick up a pen. Hence why, again, it's not a series, it's an experience. Because even then, JoJo doesn't exist on its own. If anything, the references go deep. Fashion, music, movies, cultural icons. Here are just some examples of the hundreds, if not thousands, of references Araki pumps into a series. First, we have the stands. They're the embodiment of the user's fighting spirit. And honestly, again, it doesn't even stick to that explanation. In their first introduction of the series in part 3, they were based off the tarot deck, with characters such as Star Platinum, Magician's Red, Hermit Purple, Hierophant Green, Silver Chariot, Death, Lovers, The World, Judgment, Hangman, and many, many more. But when Araki ran out of the tarot, he moved on to the Egyptian deities, and when he ran out of those, he started basing stands off musicians and bands. References to musicians and bands existed all the way from part 1, with Dio being Dio, Robert E. Speedwagon being REO Speedwagon, the Zeppelis, Led Zeppelin, Suzy Quattro, a reference to Suzy Q, Wham, Wham, Santana, Santana, AC/DC, AC/DC, Cars, the Cars. And that's just to name a teeny bit from parts 1 and 2. As the series continued, copyright became an issue with the names of certain stands when translated, which led to names such as Crazy Diamond being turned into Shining Diamond, Kira's Killer Queen to Deadly Queen, and here are some of my favorites. Bad Company to Worse Company, Notorious B.I.G. to Infamously Big, Sticky Fingers, Zipperman, Weather Report, Weather Forecast, and my most favorite of all, Limp Bizkit became Flaccid Pancake. Fun fact, that was my Discord name for the longest time. Not only does it reference the day-to-day life, but JoJo in itself is heavily referenced and admired. Heck, Rohan, Araki's totally not a self-insert character, was featured in the Louvre. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right, but yeah, the place, you know, where the Mona Lisa is kept. JoJo is iconic. It's recognizable, it's an art form, it's an experience. Everyone has a favorite JoJo. I personally love Josuke. I think he's a great guy all around. He's funky with the hair, the style. He's honestly, in my opinion, he's a green flag. Big thumbs up to that guy. My favorite JoJo villain? Now, Pucci's a menace. He's great. Dio, also a menace. He's great. Cars and the Pillarmen, amazing theme. Diavolo and Doppio, Valentine, Diego, Chef's Kiss. But at the end of the day, like many others, I love Kira Yoshikage. Why? He's just interesting as not only a villain, but as an entity. The guy didn't even exist in the first half of JoJo, and he's got such a presence in the series, and it's amazing. I just think he's an interesting character. I don't like him, you know. If I walk past him in the day-to-day life, would not like the guy, but you know. It's funny because despite Josuke being my favorite JoJo and Kira being my favorite villain, part 4 isn't even my favorite part. That goes to part 3. And favorite JoBro? Definitely Polnareff and Foo Fighters. They're silly. I love them. Favorite JoJo character? Honestly, I know I mentioned it before, but Kakyuin. I can't even begin to actually tell you why. I really think he's cool. I don't know. There wasn't much for me to gather about him, but I appreciate him all the same. I think he's my first kin. I met a lot of people through JoJo, and I made a lot of art of it. I do have a JoJo OC. I'm not going to go too much into detail about her, but her name is Saksa. She's a little older than Josuke, and she is one of Dio's underlings in part 3. Her stand is The Beat. It's based off a British band. I got it from like a random band generator. Whilst JoJo exists in a myriad of different art styles, due to the evolving nature of Araki's art, I decided to go with his latter style, where the characters in each cover heavily leaned into more fashion-esque iconographies. Not to say it wasn't always there from the start, but there exists a very stark difference between these two styles. I spent a while on the pose, but settled on something that would display the character across the cover. I wanted to make it interesting, so I decided on Naga lying on her back, draping her hair across the floor and arms, and having her look up at the viewer. It initially showed more of her body with her hands in frame, but I shifted around to make more negative space, which I felt the piece needed when I was looking through all the references I had. I wanted there to be a clear-cut contrast between the background and the main focus of the cover, just to make it pop. As always, playing around with the palettes in the same way that Araki does was a blast. It was so fun picking up what would pop, or what would make the pieces all the more interesting, whilst also having some sort of harmony with it all. Initially, I planned on making 2 separate pieces with entirely different palettes because, for those who don't know, JoJo characters, or anything to do with JoJo, doesn't actually have a set palette. You'll never know if they'll decide to give Giorno green or blue hair. They gave him blonde, but you never know what style they're actually going to go with. It's kind of great, actually. That's something I really appreciate about JoJo. When I was drawing it, 4 a.m. started to near, and while I was working on the piece, and I decided against it. Araki has a very unique way of drawing clouds, and it felt like I was drawing something with the viscosity of heavy cream. In many of his pieces, he incorporates winding vines and flowers, and I figured that'd be a nice touch, as it would fill the cover and give the viewer a little more something to look at. I added a little snake to wrap around her arms, and her sword, and there, I was done. I think out of all of them, I definitely had the most fondness for drawing this piece, as it was nice recalling all the experiences I had because of this franchise. But even without those experiences, Araki's art is a blast to view. The colors are interesting, the shapes, they're intriguing. It's definitely something I'd be proud to mount on a wall and stare at for hours. And there we have it. So there's more on the list of manga covers I'd like to attempt, but I figured it'd be nice to, split it up. I had a blast with this challenge. It's always good learning new experiences, testing out new techniques and styles, and I feel like it helps me grow as an artist. When doing challenges such as this, it also aids in finding what I like the most, what I might incorporate into my own style, and what ways I can grow from this. And on top of that, I could use this as an excuse to talk about my interests, not that I need anyone's permission. I want to make more videos like this, do what I can with what I have, and, share my thoughts on some of my most favorite things in the world. What are some anime or manga that you guys enjoy? I'm always looking out for something new to read or watch, and let me know your thoughts on the series that I went through today. Do you guys have similar experiences with them? Fond memories? Hate them with a passion? Either or. Let me know down below. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for my patrons who support me in my creative endeavors. Thank you so much for those who are on Twitch, who are there with me every step of the way for this challenge. And thank you for watching. Bye-bye.